This is Maison Frais. There's another way with Ellie Lacrosse. Create the lifestyle you want, keep the home you love, and protect your most valuable asset. Hello all, my topic for today is focusing on gardens, garden design, planting and generally enjoying our outdoor spaces. With many more of us baby boomers staying at home in the UK rather than jetting off to foreign climes post-Brexit, gardeners amongst us are finding more ways to enjoy a staycation in the comfort of our own backyards rather than the stress of waiting in airport queues and living out of a suitcase. My guests today are Lee Bestall and Jonty Joyce. Lee is an award-winning Chelsea garden designer based in South Yorkshire, and Jonty from Perennial Garden Care Services is based in Chesterfield, Derbyshire. Both guests obviously love plants and gardens. Jonty's passion is hands-on, getting hands dirty, all the weeding, pruning and planting that goes on behind the scenes to produce the blooms. He finds it so therapeutic and calming. Lee's passion is in the garden design, understanding the form and function of outdoor spaces. Combined, these two gentlemen can create outdoor havens that improve our well-being. So welcome, Lee and Jonty. How are you?
Yeah. Very good.
And you've brought the sunshine, big styly, with you today, haven't you? Yeah, fantastic. So I'm going to start with you, Lee. Okay. So my big question is, what are some of the key trends in garden design this year in 2019? And what are your tips for bringing the outdoors indoors into your spaces?
Okay, so two quite big questions.
Yeah.
Trends for this year. Gardening doesn't really move in annual trends so much as more decades.
Yeah, so it's not quite so fashionable, is it?
Yeah. So we have the things that are like the denim of the garden world, which are things like sandstone and oak and wood, the things that will always be there. So if you're trying to create a timeless kind of classic garden that's not going to date, then definitely those materials are
them in my
the
garden,
ones
that's all right.
keep. Yeah. Things, I think you can look to shows like the Chelsea Flower Show, Tatton Park, things like that, to look at what might be in fashion this year. And it's very much we're moving through a period in time of uncertainty, and so people, I think, are looking back to the past to kind of reminisce.
Nostalgia, yeah.
The nostalgia is a very big thing, so people want something familiar, and a lot of crazy paving this year.
No.
Yes, no. But not as you know it. So
my 70s youth came back to me.
I know. There's a huge north-south divide with this. So in the north, we're still ripping it all out. Yeah. They ripped it all out down south 20 years ago, so they're putting it back in again. But it's not crazy paving as you know it. It's more kind of like sections of rock almost. Right. So there's not kind of the 70s patio that we're creating. It's a very naturalistic environment that we're trying to recreate. Now, how sustainable moving rock around is, I'm not quite sure, but these gardens are sold as sustainable spaces. And if they are going to be in situ for a long time, I guess then they are more sustainable. Any patio is rock that we're moving from one place to the next anyway. Yeah. And it's definitely better for the environment than concrete products.
Is that because stuff can grow through the cracks, etc.?
No, well, drainage is a part of it, but you can improve the drainage with concrete paving products. It's more about the production methods.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So with rock, if we're harvesting local rock, obviously you've got less transport, and the longevity of it is, basically will have to go back out of fashion before someone will change it. Yeah. Whereas products made from concrete, they don't last forever, and also the manufacturing process for concrete is very unenvironmentally friendly.
It is definitely. And so the key trends then are much more sustainable, and that's the zeitgeist, really, isn't it? We're all kind of pricking our consciences about how much plastic we're using, and that's interesting, isn't it? Because my husband has literally gone through our garden, and he's replaced all the plastic planters with more, like natural ones and all the rest of it, which, not everybody can have the time or the effort to do that. And I think it's a start. I think it makes him feel better, like he's doing something.
Yeah.
But what kind of things, like in the garden, certainly I think in the UK we're getting warmer, aren't we? So what kind of things that can we put in our gardens that will kind of not need so much watering? Because that's a bit of a chore at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know.
Well, the challenge, I think, with the climate change is, or is it change? Is it just evolution? I'm not quite sure. I think in the UK we have extremes of things. So today, for example, the hottest day of the year, and then we'll go to the wettest winter we've ever had. Do you know, there's no pattern. So plants have really got to be able to cope with a massive range
robust,
of because they can be stood in water in the winter, and then they can be baked in clay.
People are often like, let's plant Mediterranean plants. Let's go for the rosemaries and the lavenders and things. But like you said, they're going to spend 3 months sitting in cold, wet soil, which is the complete opposite of what they're going to get 6 months later.
I know. We've got these, I don't even know what the technical term is, but they look very Mediterranean, very spiky, kind of very structural looking.
Xerophytes, I think, is
And we moved from the south coast about 3 years ago, and they flourished down there. They were just happy bunnies, you know. And we moved them up north, and bless them, they were so unhappy. You know, literally, it's taken like 3 years to coach them back, and then we've learnt to kind of keep them indoors in the winter time because they don't like northern winters at all.
No,
you know?
it's the wet that they can't stand. They don't mind the cold because if
it's
you think
dreary dampness,
it's the wet,
the wet roots. for 2 or 3 months is just
being waterlogged and stuff.
Yeah,
and so you said that the trends tend to be in decades rather than yearly, and I understand that because from a hard standing point of view, you can't keep ripping things up. And once you've got your basic structure in your garden, I know we inherited just a grassy field, and it's taken us 3 years to kind of zone it and kind of tie in with a side extension. And we've my husband's done the decking, and we've had our sort of patios in various zones, but the planting has taken till now to start to look a little bit established. And I am annoyingly one of those just potter around with the clippers and deadhead, and I like pots, but they take an awful lot of maintenance, don't they, this time of year? They take a lot of watering. So I've kind of made a job for myself, really, because my husband said, well, you wanted pots. You can water them.
And I think, we implement a lot of irrigation systems when we're doing planters, but again, it's not that sustainable. So what we tend to do is use really hardy shrubs around the peripheral, you know. So we've just done a makeover project for a retired couple. They're spending more time with their grandchildren now over in Manchester, so they don't want to be here all the time. And so what we've done there is done something very, very I hate the word low maintenance, but it is very low maintenance. The shrubs, you know, they only want to be 2 meters high, so we'll just let them be 2 meters high. And the background of the garden is very evergreen. There's something going on all year round.
That's what we've tried
it's
to
very,
do.
You know, it doesn't change much. But then it's the pots that we've used to then enhance the kind of colour in the season.
It's like when you're dressing, certainly for a woman, it's like you've got the classic, the sustainable, your pod wardrobe, haven't you? And then you kind of ring the changes and add a bit of bling with your jewellery and your scarves and things like that, don't you? So
or even like an indoor space where, like either your shrubs, your trees, your permanent structure as your furniture and your wallpaper, and then your pots are your throws and your cushions and your
and they're the things that can change seasonally and ring the changes with the fashions. I mean, I have noticed over the last year or so, hydrangeas are big again, aren't
huge,
they? My goodness.
I
mean, they were considered really old-fashioned, weren't they, at one point?
Yeah,
but
the white ones particularly, I've noticed clients asking for. It's this kind of New England theme that's coming over.
Oh, it's so lovely. And there's near to where I live, it's near Rennishaw Hall, which is the home, the ancestral home of the Sitwell family, very artistic. And they've got a whole area dedicated to hydrangeas, but they've used it as almost like hedging and edging. And they've got different varieties. And it's like, they're such beautiful specimens, you know? Didn't realise there was a variety.
No, it is very American, that prairie planting has been, used over here for probably 15, 20 years now, and that kind of came over from America. But the hydrangeas, the New England look, that is very, very fashionable at the moment. Kind of just softening everything. I think we've still got clients who are going for like bifolding doors and, the anthracite grey. And so it creates an outdoor living room, but it does create outdoor housework as well. I say to clients, it's not gardening, it's outdoor housework.
That's perfect.
You're going to be sweeping up, you're going to be cleaning planters. It is outdoor housework.
But somehow that's far more enjoyable.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I suppose
I think
because
it
you're
is,
breathing fresh air, aren't you?
Yeah.
And you're seeing
Yeah.
green, which is very
Yeah.
therapeutic for the eye, isn't it?
Yeah.
For the human
Yeah.
psyche and stuff.
Yeah.
So, I know that you have designed gardens for Chelsea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, do you want to tell me about your favourite garden that you designed there?
I think I've designed on Main Avenue. I've done a fresh garden and artisan, but I think the Main Avenue has to be the kind of that's where every garden designer wants to be.
Yeah, it's the showy-offy one, isn't it? Yeah,
it is. Yeah, and also the Queen visited it. It was one of the ones that the Queen selected.
Did you have to doff your cap? Did you?
I completely made a total mess of meeting the Queen because we'd been given this protocol of do this, do that, don't say this before she says that, don't say, you have to address her in a different way once you've been introduced.
Ma'am, not jam, or something like that, isn't it?
It's ma'am as in ham,
That's
yeah.
it, ma'am as in ham.
But it's Your Majesty the first time you refer to her, and then it's ma'am afterwards. And all of this stuff just went in a mash because I did this really embarrassing bow curtsy combo, which didn't include taking off my flat cap, which apparently afterwards, the older generation especially were very annoyed by, and people in my local church will not let me live that down.
So was that your last Chelsea gold?
Yes, it was. It was my last Chelsea gold, yeah. Maybe I won't be invited back. But apparently with creatives, she makes an exception.
Oh,
so
right.
I don't think she was absolutely lovely.
I bet she just found that quite endearing.
Yeah. She was
probably
bless him.
She probably met
She's
far
so
worse.
tiny, isn't
She is, and it was one of those moments in your life that you just think, what next? What can and I met Judy Dench as well, which I
the
loved
national
Judy.
treasure.
Yeah, and so she was really, really sweet. The Queen seemed genuinely interested about the garden and the flowers. She was asking about the roses.
She's very knowledgeable.
She is a gardener, isn't she?
Yeah.
And plants and horses. Apart from knowing the Constitution inside out, but plants and horses are her two passions.
Right.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad she didn't get on the subject of horses.
I'll say not knowing the back end of one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, talk me through the process of having to design a garden for Chelsea, because it's all about timing, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and it starts 1 to 2 years before the
as long as
show.
that.
Yeah, it's a huge ordeal. Growing the plants, obviously, you can be a couple of years sourcing the plants. Getting the funding actually is one of the most challenging things because these gardens cost anything from 150k to $1 million.
Really?
Yeah,
I had no idea they were that expensive.
Yeah, they are. And it's all of the things that go with it that you don't see. So all of the transportation, logistics in Chelsea is an absolute nightmare. So that costs a lot of money. Yeah. There are things like the accommodation for all your team while you're staying down there. It's an expensive place to stay. Yeah. Well, you've got to feed them a lot because they're working 8 till 8 for 3 solid weeks.
Yeah, it's hard labour, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very, very difficult. So it is a challenge getting the flowers to flower at the right time. You'll know that we plant 5 herbaceous perennials per square metre generally. Yeah. But down there we're planting 25 plants per square metre. Yeah. And you've got to grow 2 to 3 times what you need because it might not be in flower. And as a beginner, when I first did mine, I just grew exactly what I needed. And it was really, really stressful.
So, you learn, don't you, that you need that buffer so you're not stressing quite so much. Yeah. Okay. And in terms of how is the design got about? What's the inspiration? Are you given free rein, or are you given guidance, or what's that?
Well, we did a Welcome to Yorkshire Garden, and they gave me quite a loose brief, inspired by a place in Yorkshire, and we did a brewery garden to celebrate all the microbreweries.
Fabulous.
So that was you could say it was quite a loose brief, but it was it was
directed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then with the garden we did for Covent Garden. That was sponsored by the people who own most of Covent Garden now, the property investment company Capco. They gave me quite a tight brief, and I had to work with them, the RHS and their charity that they were associated with, to try and get a message across about the history of the place.
So it had a very defined theme.
Yeah, so that was more challenging, and also to kind of bring all those themes together and make a garden that makes sense, that's not too complicated. We did go through quite a process of stripping
and
that
aesthetically
back.
as well, looks beautiful, because that's what captures people's imagination, isn't it? I mean, I love tuning into Chelsea, and I've been with family members over the years several times, and I've always found it inspiring. you know, and I'm in awe, really. I just think it's so beautiful. And then I go back to my postage stamp of a garden, and I'm like, okay, so that's not quite going to work in here.
I know. They do try and encourage designers to develop take-home ideas for people. And whatever size of garden you have, there'll be a plank combination or just something like that.
The odd thing that you can scale back, for sure.
And I love looking at flowers in detail. So you kind of have, I don't know, you might have an orange flower like a GM, and then you plant it with something that's got an orange stamen. That's and that kind of detail for me really makes me tick. A lot of people just wouldn't even notice it. Sadly, they don't even notice when a tree's been cut down in the local village, which really winds me up. But don't get me started on that. So yeah, I love that kind of detail, and there's always some kind of take-home thing, from a show like that.
So what was the response to your winning garden? I mean, what kind of responses did you get, and how good was it for your business?
Oh, it was great for business. You mainly do Chelsea for ego. You do, and I think that's why it attracts lots of blokes, because they like a good competition. And you get that you get that buzz. It's very addictive, because you get that you get addicted to the adrenaline of the build. You get the competitiveness of bringing a team together and winning, and then you get the kind of end of the show when the public so and then you get your public who come up to you and praise you and pat your on the shoulder, and so that whole thing is very, very addictive. It
validates what you do.
It does. It's like a benchmark, and you've only got to mention Chelsea to someone in this industry, and all of a sudden
it puts
standard, you in a different level.
Everybody wants to be seen at Chelsea or have things to take back from Chelsea, don't they?
It was really nice to get people's response, the public's response. They don't hold back. They don't understand you've spent 2 years of your life doing this, and they just don't hold back. So they will say exactly what they think, which is a good thing and a bad thing. But when you make someone cry, when someone comes on your garden and they cry, you think, wow, I've really affected them on a different level. So that's very cool.
And sticking with this theme that, your garden is seen as a sort of oasis of calm, can feed into our well-being. I mean, we're also plugged in these days. If we're fortunate to have an outdoor space, to try and use that as an antidote to some of the silliness and the noise that goes around in our lives, So what ways do you think, what top tips can you give people for bringing a bit of that lovely oasis and calm into the house itself? So you get that kind of indoor-outdoor thing going on.
Yeah, okay. So houseplants, I was going to mention a massive trend for this year. They've been on the increase for the past 2 years. Yeah. Again, a bit of an 80s thing, with the dead spider plant in the corner and the dusted Dracaena. But this year, houseplant sales have rocketed, and I think it's a great thing to green indoor spaces. We in our house we have this hybrid scheme going on. So we have some artificial. We did actually, conversation
on social media about faux planting.
Yeah. So I've got some kind of things that are artificial, and then I've got some things which I bring out that are seasonal. So for example, I might have some artificial ferns that I put in some real cyclamen with, and you kind of like mix it up like that, because it cheapens the not appearance, but it reduces the cost of having a seasonal display. Yeah. I mean, my table, I'm massively into tablescapes. So if you don't know what they are,
I saw a picture that you sent through.
So it's landscaping on your dining room table.
It was
so if people come round to dinner, it's like, am I sat in a jungle?
No one through the foliage.
You get two responses. Some will come in and go, whoa, this is amazing, and we'll sit there amongst the garden even in winter and eat. And others, you can just see, probably my mum, is just sat there thinking, what the is going on here? And but it's Lee, he's a bit crazy. But I'm inspired by friends that I've got in London who one who works in a big department store down there, and he just, his house is amazing. I go down there and but people look at Pinterest nowadays, don't they? We want to leave these Pinterest lives. Yeah. And I love that, because it's raising the bar.
It is raising the bar, and it's very curated, and it's very perfect as well.
Yeah.
I mean, my plants have to thrive on neglect, basically, inside. I mean, I have got a little theme whereby once a week I am checking on them. And so we've got into that regularity. But if I go away anytime, those poor plants are on a death sentence.
And that is the tricky bit.
Despite instructions and writing it in words of one syllable, my husband just seems to be completely oblivious to anything green and organic in the house. So I'm with you on the faux planting, because I got told off for calling it fake. I was saying, no, you must call it faux, which is kind of posh, isn't it? But to me, it's like when you put hair extensions in your hair as a woman, you're enhancing what you've got, but you've got volume and you've got a bit of gloss, and it just makes it a bit more noticeable.
Yeah, it does. But the benefits of having real plants around you, the artificial ones, they don't give you those. So I do think it's important to have a combination of both. Yeah. And I don't know about you, Jonty, but in my bathroom, plants do really survive well, because you've got the humidity.
It's moist, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got the frosted glass, they're not getting full sunshine. They're still getting plenty of light.
Exactly.
They do very well.
Yeah. So I'd say for beginners, that's the perfect place. Start with an orchid or a fern in the bathroom, and that is the perfect place. And if you go away for a week, just put a little tray of water underneath it, some gravel in there.
I now have learnt my lesson, and I put them all in the bath, and that they're on a little mat and stuff, and at least they're moist.
So they're having like a spa break while you're away on holiday.
I thought of it like that. How very dare they? And I think maybe the IKEA effect as well, with the macrame, the revival of the 70s macrame baskets. I mean, they look stunning. I mean, I've got a few of those in my house now. They offer a bit of scale, don't they? And you can green up your dead corners and things.
It's all good for feng shui too.
Feng shui. Oh, here we go. Right. Yeah. All right, then that's fantastic. Right, I'm going to stick over to you then, Jonty. So you have a passion for getting your hands dirty, don't you? Real hands-on man of the soil type jobs in the garden. So what's the worst job in the garden, in your opinions?
Animal poo. I'm just going to say it.
Nice.
Putting it out there. Yeah.
No matter how many, most of my clients have been very good and they have picked up, and but inevitably you'll find something.
Yeah, lurking.
Yes. And it's normally, you don't notice when you've stepped over it, it's when you step backwards to escape the border. You think, hang on a minute.
Yes.
So that is the main.
Worst.
Yeah.
The worst.
People used to say weeding. Oh, what about all the weeding? And say, well, weeding is quite nice. Quite like getting down there, because then you're seeing stuff and you're seeing what's going on, and you notice other things, and you're still hands-on. There's some horrible weeds that will take months or years to constantly.
I know from my property background as an investor, Japanese knotweed is oh my gosh, if you find that on your property or a neighbour's property, I mean, it can wipe the value of your property way down. And you have to really deal with it. I think there are some ordinances, local ordinances now, where you actually have to deal with it, take responsibility and get
I mean, there's specialist companies now
you
to
can't just
get rid
rip
of
it out.
No.
It's that pervasive. I mean, it has to be dealt with. It's almost like it's like toxic waste.
Well,
because if you just take the runners and just shove them in a skip, they can be transplanted somewhere else.
And it's illegal to let it spread onto somebody else's property as well. So it's not just containing on your property and getting rid of it, but it's like monitoring next door.
And I think even plants, because I've got grandchildren, and when we go to other people's places and stuff, and I have a friend who has a beautiful cottage garden, and she's got foxgloves and stuff, which is beautiful, but they're poisonous.
Yeah, most things in the garden will kill you.
But a lot of younger people don't.
Or make you very ill.
A lot of younger people don't understand some of the toxicity of some of these plants that can look beautiful, but are very toxic for children and animals. Like you say, your pets can come a cropper, can't they?
Yeah. But there've been so many panicking people on social media and stuff saying, we just bought this house and it's got foxgloves, or it's got lilies in the garden, and we've got cats and dogs and they're all going to die and everything's going to be horrible. And we say, there's no actual evidence that a pet has died. Yes, it could make them ill, but most animals are sensible enough to know that doesn't taste nice, I'm going to leave it alone.
Or they would taste nasty and they'd be sick anyway.
They take the oils and stuff in there. Just
designed to put them off anyway.
I mean, their hydrochloric acid in their stomach will pretty much frazzle anything.
Exactly,
to be honest.
And laburnums, people are like, I've got gorgeous laburnum in my garden, but I've got grandkids now, so that has to go.
Get rid of the grandkids, I would say.
Exactly,
Keep the tree.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't ask the grandkids.
If the kids are stupid enough to eat it, get a dog that won't.
For laburnum, you haven't paid for the grandkids. Come on. Yeah, so there is quite a bit of maintaining panic with people, and saying, there's no scientific evidence that anybody has ever had laburnum poisoning, for example. there are a few anecdotal stories.
Yes, I mean, I remember being told as a child by my mum, you know, the dangers of laburnum.
Yeah, and people say, oh, every part is deadly. If you touch the wood, then you got like 4 minutes to live.
You know, it's beautiful, but don't have it in the house.
Yeah.
Don't touch
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
You know, just keep a zone
It's
around
the seeds
it.
that are the poisonous part, and it's thought that from people being taught to like pick the peas in the garden and just shell them and eat them fresh in the garden, and then because they're a similar seed pod, then that's where the confusion comes in.
Confusion.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
so this knowledge you've gleaned obviously by doing,
just feeding stuff to people.
Yeah,
and seeing
but
what
also
happens.
you are RSH trained,
Yes,
aren't you?
yeah.
So you've done all this studying about plant and botany and all the rest of it. So what was that like? What made you decide to do horticulture?
It was a point in my time in my life when I had a horrible job. I'd gone from a social care background, moved to Bristol, couldn't get any work in social care. My wife had ME, so I needed to get work because I needed to be at home more for her. So I said, right, I'm going to take the first job that comes along that pays at least the salary I'm on now and that I can see myself doing for the next 12 months. Unfortunately, the first job that came along that met all that criteria was a traffic warden. So, right, okay.
Yeah, we're leaving the building
But
now. Yeah.
I've said it now.
Oh, bless.
So
I mean, how unfortunate that we would have that reaction. I mean,
Well,
you're
yeah.
doing a vital job, keeping the streets
exactly.
clear.
Yeah, and my plan to do for a year turned into 9 years.
Wow.
During those 9 years, I had a 1-year secondment with Bristol Social Care, doing elderly and disability social care, which I was doing previously. And that year just showed me that I did not want to go back in social care. It's just so budget constrained, admin based. There's far less time to consider what people actually need. It's more about what can the council afford to give them.
Absolutely.
So during that year, I thought, I don't want to go back.
Yeah.
But I definitely don't want to stay back in civil traffic enforcement for too long. So I'd already started gardening about 5 years previously, just as a hobby, and people had been saying to me, why don't you do it as a living? And I'm saying, no, I don't want to go down that road. It's for all the excuses that when someone gives you a good idea, we sometimes often try to no, I can't do that because it's a good idea. It clearly can't work. So over the years, I just thought, let's just go for it. So I did my RHS level 2, volunteered for a year with the gardens team at Bristol Zoo Gardens. And from there on, just thought, this is what we're going to do. So
you found your passion.
Yeah. And going back to something I'd previously enjoyed in the social care was nice that I didn't like it, because then it's like, well, that's fine. I can wipe that clean.
Sure.
Because for 5 years I've been trying to get back into that, but so glad I didn't. Yeah.
And what is it, what is it about seeing something grow, you think, can give so much well-being to people? I mean, as a child, I did enjoy going to my nana's, and she'd be sowing seeds, and then every visit you would be getting a progress report on the little shoots and things, and then being able to kind of have a wee patch in the garden that was mine, and to watch these things, and then perhaps if it was edible, I mean, gosh, that those spring onions tasted amazing.
Exactly, yeah. And we always have to grow strawberries for my boys every year, strawberries, and even for them, from the time when the plants go in and they're just leaves. And then you get a little flower on there. And then one of the boys will look through the window, I'll be out in the garden and say, Daddy, there's a hoverfly, there's a bee and he's pollinating and we're going to get strawberries. And just like the whole process of, it's not just about the end result. Like when you're home decorating or home renovating, it's pretty much just about the end result. You don't want the mess and all
exactly. That's what I do.
The
try
paintings
keep
and
that
exactly,
off people's shoulders.
Yeah. But with the gardening, for me, there's never that messy stage. When you're doing like a whole garden design, there's a bit where it's like, but even then the goal is more imminent. So for me it's just about seeing how things come together, like you say, experimenting with colours and forms and not allowing a garden to be static.
Yes,
like
I agree.
Gardens are literally organic.
Yes, yeah.
So for me a garden is never the same 1 year as it is the next, because partly because you've had to move so often in the last 5 years, but even then I wouldn't want a garden to be like, well, that's my garden for the next 10 years. Right. Those plants are staying where they are. Yeah. It's like, well, naturally, that might look nice over there, and we're going to put that there. And so it's that constant, it's kind of the creative side as well as the botany side.
What do you say to people who say, well, if you know the soil, as in the pH of the soil, you can pretty much plant anything that's happy in that soil? Yeah,
it's not just about soil, though, it's about the microclimates. Each garden could have different microclimates in each corner, or different aspects depending where they're facing. I did a garden recently where half of it was rock hard clay and the other half was pretty much pure sand.
So yes, there was a weird kind of middle area that was probably the best.
So it is worth, if you're doing a brand new garden, like the general advice if you moved into a new house is to monitor for a year.
The general advice is to clear what the builder's left and
That's
put in some fresh topsoil because it's full of rubbish.
But I can never wait a year in a house. It's like, I'm going to wait a year. It's crazy. But pH tests can help, but as long as you do a good selection around the garden. But there are plenty of plants that will grow in any pH soil anyway.
I mean, getting back to hydrangeas are very sensitive to the pH of the soil because their colour.
The whites will always be white.
Change. Yeah, but then I've
blue for acid.
Yeah.
Pink for alkaline.
Yeah, I've had some hydrangeas in the past that are kind of don't know what they are.
Yeah.
They're kind of multi, kind of bluey, mauvey, purpley, kind of, and they're changing.
Yeah.
You know?
They're an indicator plant, so they'll indicate what kind of soil you've got.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah, as people often say, walk up and down your street if you're in a new house, see what neighbours have got.
So what is it with the white hydrangeas then? What's going on with white hydrangeas?
They just aren't sensitive to
they're not
soil
responsive.
acidity or alkalinity.
Have they been kind of bred that way?
They've just always been that way, I believe, haven't they? Yeah.
And where do hydrangeas actually come from? Where in the world do they actually naturally?
Oh, it's China air, isn't it?
Yeah.
Was it a Victorian or Georgian invention? You know, they're bringing these.
They
things
brought them
back.
in, I believe. Yeah, but they're originally from China. Mountainous regions, I believe, aren't they?
They're a lot of woodlands, so they you've got some that'll grow in full sun, some that'll grow in full shade, part shade. They do need to be kept moist though. They do like to be moist at the roots, otherwise they kind of
slightly tropical regions of the.
Just
that's
the
moistness, cold, don't they?
So maybe sort of mountainous regions as well. Sort of woody mountainous regions and stuff.
They like to be cool, don't they?
Yes.
Do they?
Yeah.
They don't like the full midday sun
Some
time.
will, some do.
Wow.
You know that you were talking about Renishaw earlier. They've got some Annabelle, and it's absolutely amazing at the moment.
It's jaw-droppingly beautiful. We were there last weekend.
That size of footballs, the flowers.
They are. They're really like the size of heads. Yeah,
you've got to stake it. That's the thing. You need to stake it tight up.
That's the
they
biggest
were
thing.
kind of well tied back, you know, because I think they can get quite they get top heavy, don't they? Flop around.
That's something I'm very guilty in my garden. Not staking early enough.
That is the key, isn't it? Because when I was at Wisley, I was like, "What? They're staking in February?
Yeah, like the growth is this high, and they're putting the stakes in. Right.
But you've got to.
Come on, you bad boy. That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it grows through it and it disguises it.
Otherwise, it always looks contrived. It always looks like trying to force this thing into this little constraint where it doesn't want to be. But stake before.
Yeah.
Stake before. Okay.
And if it's not needed, you can always pull some out if you've got too many in. But just get your structure down and.
Okay. And how can you help, Jonty, us with the less green-fingered folk with doing all these necessary jobs? How would you structure what you have to do at different times of the year? Because I'm always a bit confused when to say, like, prune my wisteria.
Yeah, pruning is the...
I'm always a bit afeared. My husband just takes the nuclear approach. It's just they get scythed.
Yeah,
and if they survive, great. If they don't, you know.
Most things will survive hard pruning, but it's whether or not they'll flower properly the next year.
Yeah.
Lots of the early flowering, like spring flowering, early summer shrubs, will flower on new growth. So if you leave that too late, then it's not going to get the new growth in time for the next flowering season. So if you got spring, like they're always caveats where apart from these two or these three, but as a general rule, if something flowers early, prune it after flowering. Take it back down to always anticipate for the next year's growth as well. Like often people will
don't butcher it.
But also don't leave too much, whereas then if you're going to gain this much next year, then that's going to be on top of what's already there. So just get a good pruning book. The RHS do really good pruning and training books. And don't be afraid. Like I said, the worst case scenario for most things is you might miss on flowers next year.
Or it dies.
Well,
that is the worst, isn't it? People are really, really scared.
Yeah, exactly.
But most people learn through doing, don't they?
You don't make those, I mean, especially if it's an expensive specimen shrub, you don't do that mistake twice.
No, exactly.
Or get a good gardener.
Yes.
Just a nice little plug for you.
This is a great plug for both of you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So with what you do, the service you offer, what kind of things are you asked to do on a regular basis, Jonty?
I try to manage expectations beforehand. So I tell people this is what my service is. For example, I don't tend to do lawns or hedges.
Right.
Partly because it takes up a lot of time.
Yeah.
It's not something I completely love doing. And there's so many lawn and hedge companies out there already who have the facilities, You know, if you're going to get into lawns and hedges, you need the machinery, you need the maintenance, you need the vehicles, and it just all snowballs. So if someone has a lawnmower and they want me to do their lawn as part of their visit, great, I can do that. So I always try to explain that beforehand. Then my service is more about maintaining established gardens.
Okay.
When I first go in, there might be some kind of tidying up work to do, weeding, bramble.
So you're
taming.
taking the slog out
Yes,
of the process, aren't you, really?
Yeah.
And I know, more senior people, they really, really appreciate their gardens. But
and they know what to do.
They know what to do, but sometimes it gets, their mobility gets in the way.
Yeah.
And they can't bend down as much and stuff like that. Or would you both recommend kind of getting to grips with raised beds for people in their gardens?
Yeah, they can be beneficial, but then you've got the offset of your soil will drain quicker in a raised bed, so you need to look at extra drainage or opposite to drainage. Anti-drainage, that's the word, yes. Yeah.
It's the tricky one, isn't it? Because it's going back to what we were saying before. In the winter, you want good drainage. In the summer, you want it needs good drainage still, but it wants to hold water.
Yeah.
So it is a tricky one. But, mulching at the right time of year, after the winter rains, doing some mulching. People, I went to America recently, and they are obsessed in that part of America with mulching. Oh, yeah. Everyone mulches. Yeah, they do. And even the council, literally everyone, whether you're into gardening or not. And I don't think we mulch, it's not a thing
America,
over here.
I've lived in America, and their seasons are very much more defined than we have.
But
their winters are very severe.
Brutal.
And their summers, depending on the zones. I mean, I lived in New England, Massachusetts, and I was surprised how muggy it was in the summer. It was incredibly hot. Like this sort of temperature was average. But it was sticky. It was humid. And I'd gone from living in Poland, in Warsaw, in the capital, and it's exactly on the same latitude as where I used to live out in Massachusetts. So we had exactly the same continental temperatures. And I was really knocked out at how sticky it was, and I was complete mozzie meat, I mean, it was that humid. 80
Plants
to
quite
90%.
like that though, don't they?
They
quite
like
exactly.
it.
They don't like dry heat.
And you
most
could
of them.
see, you could just put a cane in that soil and it would bloom.
Right, yeah.
It was that, it had such fecundity, it had such fertility about it and such life about it that most things would just grow. That was quite amazing.
We're at the point now where we've always wanted to control nature, like landscape gardening and all the topiary and stuff. It's all about trying to control nature and say, no, I know this is what you want to do, but I'm going to make you do this. And there is a point where gardening and landscaping is about that, but I think we now need to look at kind of a bit of a give and take. It's like, okay, half my plants are dying because of the weather or my soil conditions or anything. Why am I battling through having a miserable looking garden for half the year? Let's look at what will survive. If I need raised beds and raised planters, some of the plants aren't going to be suitable for that. So let's look at stuff that is going to look good and is still going to...
So this is really where your services come in to the fore, don't they? You've got the knowledge, which most of us don't have. And so any purchases are going to be, the return on investment on those are going to be so much better with your services, aren't they?
Exactly.
If somebody had a blank canvas, Lee, and... they had a pretty substantial house and they wanted to add value to that house, would you agree that having a beautifully designed garden can actually add value to a property?
I'm always nervous about saying adding value. It definitely makes it more saleable.
Right.
I think it will add some value, but it will not add the value that you will spend on creating it, in my experience.
So you might not break even on your investment.
This is not about when we do a garden for a property developer, it's a very different brief to when we do it for someone who's going to stay in the house for 5, 10, 15 years.
Who are invested in there.
But if you live on a housing estate with 2,000 generic houses that are all the same, and you do something special,
it's going to stand out.
It is going to stand out, and there's always going to be houses on that market, on that estate for sale at the same time, and it's about yours making the same.
So giving it a bit of a pop, really.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So you'll get a premium for it.
Yeah.
And people want that instant. So they don't, you could create that garden in any of those other houses, but they know that what a trauma that's going to be. And they're just like, oh, I can't even, most people have no imagination.
Yeah.
It astounds me.
It astounds me, Lee,
Yeah.
with, like in decor, people walk around and which is why I always dress properties, for sale or even for getting rentals, because people, like you say, haven't the imagination, and guys are the worst. Because all guys generally want to know is where the man cave is and where the telly's going. They're just, where's my telly going to go on the wall, So I get that. I totally get it. It's like showing what can be the vision.
Yeah. So we always show people like a video, a visual walkthrough of what the garden will look like when it's finished. And there's no correlation between your age or your sex or whatever, but it's all, some people just can't imagine it. And my mum said to me when I was little, Lee, if you can get paid for daydreaming, you'll be a millionaire.
Yes.
And I was like, I need a job where I can get paid for daydreaming.
My school teacher said to me when I was in infant school, if you can get this boy's imagination on paper, you'll be earning a lot of money.
Yeah.
She didn't bother. It's like, well, that's your job to get me doing that. Come on. I'm 4.
Yeah. But do your children, do they share your passions now?
Yes.
For gardening?
Yeah,
Is
my
that
oldest wanted to be an astronaut
Right.
until he realised he couldn't take me in space with him because I'm past the cut-off age for becoming an astronaut.
And there's
now.
no plants up there.
Well, I did say, well...
You'd be bored.
Then he said, but I want to be a gardener as well. I said, well, you could be a space botanist.
True.
He said you could be on the space station growing plants. He said,
Actually, I would think there would be a very good job for space botanists.
yeah. And he said, could you come with me then? I said, no, I still couldn't. He said, well, I think I'll just stay on Earth and be a normal gardener then.
And is it like cheap labour?
Yes,
well?
yeah. Slightly
It's
more
training,
expensive.
isn't it?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh, yeah, training
Yes,
slash
that's
cheap
sorry.
labour.
Yes. Well, it can be slightly expensive training. If they come back in and say, "Look, I've been waiting 6 months for that to flower, and now it's got buds on." I said, "Yeah, but it was getting a bit long."
Oh no.
Okay, that's lovely. Should we pop
it's
that in the vase then?
Yeah. I always had a friend, worryingly, was a teacher, and he said, I've been weeding at the weekend, and I said, how do you know which were the weeds and which were not? And he said, well, I dug them up, and if they had a bulb on, I put them back in. And I was like, whoa. And you're teaching our next generation.
Parading his ignorance.
Yeah.
She's got a lovely swathe of wild garlic.
Yes.
Yeah,
The bluebells are doing exceptionally well. Apart from the fact this was a bank holiday summer weekend.
Oh, no.
So probably everything wilted anyway.
Yes, yeah.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Talking about wild garlic, I love walking along the canals where I live, and you can smell it before you can see it. And I just love picking it and putting it in my salads. And I just think you all need to be taught these things,
I mean, now we call it foraging.
Yeah.
Back in like 100, 200 years ago, it was called shopping.
Stealing.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just called going out to get food,
Maybe
wasn't
you
it?
can help me out here. What's the deal with it? Because if you're walking down the side of the road and you see, an apple tree that doesn't, I don't know.
Scrumping.
But is that allowed?
As long as it's not on somebody else's land, it's like collecting seeds from wildflowers. As long as you're doing it just a few.
And if
for
it's
your
only
own
just
benefit,
for your own benefit, if
as
you're
long as
like
you're not
one
yeah.
apple for to
Right,
satisfy
okay.
your craving
Yeah.
of
You
apples,
can't benefit from it
not
other than your
strip
own.
the tree and try flog them off
Exactly,
down the road.
yeah.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So like bramble picking, I've seen people out on
I
the
do that
sides of
all
the
the
road.
time.
That's fine, is it?
Yeah.
That's not
Of course it's-
stealing.
No.
That's part of growing up in childhood.
exactly.
And
I'm always
food.
scared that I'm like, who's going to nab it? So it's supposed to be a lovely, relaxing event, and actually I'm
They
just sat there
don't even
thinking,
find people for litter picking. They're not going to be spending their time
exactly.
looking for people picking
No.
blackberries,
No. Leave it up for the birds and it'll be fine.
Knock yourself out. Take
they
a
get
little,
there before us.
Take a
They
little.
do,
I always
yeah.
take because I was got my doggy with me. I've got spare doggy bags,
Yes,
clean ones,
yeah.
obviously. But
Don't
they
get them
make
mixed up.
perfect little carriers for berries and
Yeah.
bits and pieces. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a joy. That's a
Yeah.
joy of walking out in the countryside. Is is scrumping and
Yeah.
snaffling.
Yeah.
When my oldest was about 4 or 5, we were in Chesterfield in Bristol, and I still remember the look of joy in his face when I picked a blackberry off the wild bush and gave it to him. And he went, I can eat it. I said, yeah. He's like, but it was about 30 seconds before he actually put it in his mouth because he just wanted to savor this moment of going,
Wow.
I'm eating something from an actual
And was it
bush.
actually ripe? Because that
was
is
good.
a big letdown,
It was a good
isn't
one.
it? You
Yeah.
build them up and
It
then you
was
give
the
them a
perfect
sour
one.
berry.
Yes,
That's
that's
not,
it, yeah.
that's not good.
or an unripe gooseberry.
Stand back and watch.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great. So any last tips for our listeners about gardens in general?
I think just don't be afraid. If if you're having a garden redesign, obviously there's expense to think of. But when it comes to actual planting and the maintenance, first of all, get advice from people. Get a gardener in. Like, I'm quite happy to go in if someone who's got basic knowledge and wants to extend it. I'm quite happy to work with them to teach them how to do. Okay, well, these things you'll be able to manage.
So you
This
kind
is
of
how you do
model
it.
how to do it. That's great.
Yeah. But a garden should be a place you enjoy, which is part of my service.
And it's your space, an extension of your
that's it,
vision, isn't it?
What do you want? You don't have to have what next door neighbours have, what your parents have had, or
it's your little haven,
and just enjoy it. Like, my service is aimed at getting people's gardens to a place where they can enjoy them, where they don't step out the door and go, oh,
so it's not
goodness.
seen as a chore.
Yeah. Where if you want to do a bit of like weeding, like pruning, mowing the lawn, that's fine. But enjoy your space. It shouldn't be this thing where you can come home and the whole weekend is dedicated to pruning.
That's such a drudge, isn't it? On your free time, it's like, oh, I've got to do this.
Yeah.
And with you, Lee, if people are investing in the landscape of their gardens, what brings in the most bang for their buck? What's the best return on investment with landscaping?
Plants every time. They're a fraction of the cost of hard landscaping, but for some reason people are obsessed with hard landscaping. So it's all about how big the patio is.
Yeah, my husband wants he's always on about the structure of the garden.
I think people are more scared about the upkeep of plants. Whereas the more hard landscaping, the less maintenance there is.
Well, yeah, but they don't realise how much maintenance the hard landscaping is. You've got to sweep it every week. You have to.
That deck's got to be so it's not slippy.
And if it's not immaculate, they're out there with the power washer, the Hoover.
That's because they want to use their tools.
Maybe. But hard landscaping and guys and lawns, there is a link there. But they're so hard maintenance. Yes, such hard maintenance. Lawns
are just.
I've had planting borders in a client's house, and we mulched the whole thing with a deep gravel. And it doesn't get very weedy. Literally an hour a week does a huge plot, whereas you'd spend that mowing a lawn and edging. And what have you got for at the end of it? 2 days later, I want to do it again.
I mean, I've got a colleague, network colleague, and his business is booming by actually ripping up lawns. Putting in the plastic stuff, which is I'm a bit. I'm a bit ambivalent about that. I get the point about the low maintenance once it's down there, but then I'm thinking about
better
the birds,
options.
The birds and nature and stuff like that. And it seems to be a current thing.
And the whole
kind of rip
plastic
out your
thing
lawn.
as well, and it's just like there are areas I used AstroTurf in one garden when we lived there because it was heavy clay soil. It was it was at the bottom of the garden where I was doing a small play area for the boys, and the grass never grew there, and it was just one strip of about 4 feet square. It was always going to struggle, wasn't it? And it was just a place where the boys could sit. The rest of it was wood bark and logs for them to sit on, and I built a playhouse out of pallets and stuff. But there was that one area where it was always going to be horrid because the soil was clay was only about this thick onto hardcore. So the plastic grass worked great there, but there is that fine line of kind of aesthetics over practicalities, isn't there?
And it's really, I guess I am a fan of it in small gardens because it's just like carpet, really. We think nothing about recarpeting a room in our house, and so it's permeable, so water can go through it. You're not watering it in the summer. We're not weed feeding it. We're not pouring chemicals onto it.
They will still need to sweep or vacuum. I was vacuuming with an outdoor vac. Someone's artificial grass because
you have to kind of
clogs up,
maintain
the pores clog up and stuff. So
and especially if you've got pets, you have to maintain that, don't you? Otherwise we're back to the original.
It's still far less than the grass.
That's been amazing. Thank you ever so much, guys. Thank you so much. And I'd love to have you back on the show at some point in the future and give updates on your passions with your gardens.
Cool.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay.